Welcome to One Sharp Sword, cutting through to what matters most. I'm your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Purnell, and I am delighted with our guest today. It's an amazing. We met via LinkedIn and struck up a conversation, and it turns out we have a lot in common. And yet it turns out that there's such a different path. You can learn a lot from Nico Veressen, who is joining me today. He's an executive coach. He's a peak performance expert. He's helped CEOs and celebrities. He has a strong background in psychology. And then he took all of that and bounced it off of his background as a world champion fighter. And in our early discussions, the reason I wanted to bring him on was I wanted to talk about what getting punched in the face has to do with leadership. And, and so we'll talk a little bit. Nico, welcome to One Sharp Sword.
It's an honor. I'm so happy to join you here, on your beautiful platform. And I'm going to do my utter best to provide your followers, your viewers, with some solid content,
Well, it's a conversation, and out of the conversation comes solid content. So here you are. You first of all, why don't you share a little bit? You're in what country? And did you start down the psychology path first, or did you start down the martial arts and championship fighting path first?
Well, it was dual, actually. When I was 14, I was shy. I didn't dare to talk to women, and I wanted to be a fighter. So, certain moment, a friend invited me to go to the gym, to Muay Thai, and I was like, Thai boxing, I wanted to do something Eastern. And then I came there and I saw them really hitting full contact on each other. And a few years ago, before, I did some Japanese jiu-jitsu, but it was too soft for me. I had to do push-ups all the time because I was too wild. And all of a sudden, I was there in that gym. I saw them literally knocking each other to the floor. It was the old timers, they were really hard. And I just fell in love, and I never stopped training since that moment.
Okay, but very few people say that jiu-jitsu is too soft. So
it was traditional Japanese jiu-jitsu. For me, the way the training was run was too soft. Yeah.
I got you. That's amazing. Tell me and our audience, tell us where you're from, and that accent is certainly not from Texas. So.
Not really. Well, not yet. You never know. Texas has some very.
It's very true. So where are we talking to? Like, where are you based now? Where did you grow up?
I grew up and was born in Belgium, and then during my fight career, I went all over the world. Of course, I was Thailand. Obviously, I went to the States to do MMA. I was in Holland, and I fought all over. So it was really nice. And then at the end of my career, when 7 retinal detachments, so my eyes were torn, forced me to stop, I decided, I wanted to help people to not do what I did. I believed that I was like Rocky. No matter how hard I was hit, I didn't care. I just ran forward. And I see the same thing happening all over. First, I was working with other athletes. They were doing the same thing. But then they got the title, and then they were empty and depressed. And it was so interesting to me to see that. And then later with CEOs and executives, I saw the same thing. And so I started my company really to give a different perspective. That to become a true champion, to step into your fullest potential, just going full on is just self-limiting. I literally pushed my entire potential because I was not a world champion, I was a vice world champion. I pushed my entire potential into the abyss by just literally not listening a moment to my body. And I want to help people to do it differently because you don't have to suffer to become successful.
That's huge, right? That, like, boom, that is a beautiful soundbite. You don't have to suffer to be successful is a wonderful thing to say. The fact that you had a path of pushing and pushing and pushing, and you saw people around you pushing and pushing and pushing. You get that title, and then what, right? And for you, retinal detachments stopped you, and you look at your life and you go, really, this is it? Right? And it's like, that's awesome. So so you're working with organizational leaders. Yes. And you're helping them to find fulfillment, to find meaning in their lives. And that's something that any one of us could be looking for more, right? That, how do I find more meaning in my own life? Okay. It's a great question. So what kind of, by the way, I'm just reading your bio over again. It's, some people help others become more fulfilled. Some people talk about living more joyfully, and your bio says that you help them live in ecstasy. And so I have a couple of questions for you.
Of course.
And the questions are these. What is it you do, like when you work with senior leaders or anyone, right? What is it you do that helps them really understand what living a fulfilled life is, or feeling like what they do matters, giving them meaning? And then the second part of that is, how do you take someone from feeling fulfilled to living a life of ecstasy?
Well, so the first thing is questions.
Okay.
1,000 questions. Because like what is fulfilling to me is not fulfilling to you, per definition. Or it can be, but I don't know. So the question is one of the most powerful tools that I have. But then of course that's step one. Then we get some insight in what our values are, what our personal strengths, what are our personal boundaries also, what do you want or what do you don't want. But that's only the basics, it's really, really, really basic. But then let's go into demystifying certain so-called truisms. For example, the fact that we are being told that stress is bad is to me an abomination. It's just not seeing the complete truth. And so they see only at one certain kind of thing. Now, research more and more is indicating is that what you believe that stress is good, and you learn to embrace that, well, then it's of course much more simple than after the fact, after your workday, to let go, because you understand it's a normal part of the world. And so, for example, Dr. Elia Crum from Stanford, she's a master in this, and a real inspiration. And if you want to learn more about it, you have to look up the stress is enhancing mindset. It's fantastic.
Okay.
So by just changing your mind, you can learn to what I call adultify as a person. So we live in a society where these days a lot of people are very sensitive. We can't say nothing, and certain groups, for sure, which groups they are, they can't say nothing about, for example, discrimination or sexism, because we didn't go through the same thing. Now, at the same time, the problem is then you stop conversation. And when you stop conversations between people with an opposite vision, you stop the evolution. Like your book states, we're always transitioning. And how can you transition if you both stop listening to each other? So I help also those leaders to start to listen to people that give them critique, and to create what I call internal psychological safety, whereby no matter what other people say or what they do, you can hold on to yourself without having to react emotionally out of an emotion outburst, and where you can learn to soothe your emotions. Because when you can do that, when you can keep in touch with your own values and your own strengths and your own beliefs, well, then both can start to co-create. I truly believe that. I think that's essential.
I love that. I'm making notes. So if you see me looking down, it's that I am writing. I love the idea of internal psychological safety, right? I do a lot of work with personal identity and, people who are triggered or offended. It has to do, in my opinion, with a threat to personal identity. Like somebody said something that threatens who I believe I am. And I think that your term of internal psychological safety is exactly that. And to take it from that to a place of co-creation is magical. It's magical, right? So I love that. I love the idea of opening conversation. And it's really about exploration. Like when you co-create, you are exploring what the other person believes, and you're offering versus imposing what you believe, right? That's co-creation. What's been some of the most significant kind of change that you've seen in a leader that you've worked with?
Well, I worked with several women that were really successful, real hard pushers. Like, man, like it was incredible how they could do what they did. But of course, they came to me because they want to have even more and do even more. But I understood that was not what was going on. They were working so hard, they were achieving so much because something was lacking. And very often, with a lot of very powerful and successful and very intelligent women that very often look good too, they take care of themselves, it's loneliness. And with men too, don't get me wrong, but it comes out in a different way. And so, like, the biggest transformations that I've seen is that when I work with female leaders, but also with male leaders, actually, where they have to plan in pleasure, because otherwise it will not happen. And what is pleasure? Pleasure to me is everything that fulfills you. So there is a difference. I take it from, so there's a difference between what I call entertainment and what I call pleasure. Now, pleasure is everything that after the fact you feel fulfilled, even when you're tired. Working for me can, for example, be an absolute pleasure. When I read a book and it gives me some new insights, I get in Nord mode, I disappear, I see nobody, and I become, well, a little bit autistic-like, and it's everything disappears.
You're absorbed in the book, yes, totally.
But then the next day, even though I didn't stop reading for 20 hours, sometimes I have to put the timer to say, okay, time to go to bed. I learned that. Now, then even though I'm really exhausted, I am fulfilled. I have more energy to do other things. Now, I have other clients that work really hard, that get so much achievement, that like win after win after win, millions after millions. And so what?
Right.
My private plane, who cares? I mean, like, it's really funny because they forgot we have two pleasure systems in our body. You have the dopamine system, and they're really changing that. What don't I have? And so they train their neurology more and more to focus outside of themselves towards the future, towards something they don't have yet. But then, when they get that, they don't take the time to recharge that dopamine system, to just, activate the serotonin system. In other words, to enjoy what they have in the now, in the moment, with the people that are important for them. That to me are two very important things, because oxytocin and the hugging hormone and serotonin work very strongly together. And when I see it, and then there's a problem. So they have, it creates a kind of almost atrophy whereby never doing that, they are not able to do it anymore. And then when you have nothing else to strive for.
That is really well said. I haven't heard them juxtaposed like that, dopamine versus serotonin. The reason we feel good about striving for something is that it's a dopamine hit. I want this. This is, and then really taking the time to enjoy it once you get it, that's huge too. And that is right? There's this strive, go, I want this, dopamine. And then it really is about just settling back. I love that, enjoy what you have. I also I also think it's really important to be talking about building in time for pleasure. Build it into your calendar. And one of the things that I'm a big fan of is state what your values are, and then look at your calendar. Right. And you've said you want this, but your calendar says all of that, and it's not this. It's not the stated values. It is not the stated values. And so where you spend your time is really the neon sign that says this is what you really value. Absolutely. You might say you value this, but you're off doing something else. So plan pleasure. You also said something very important as well, which is a lot of people seem to be seeking outside things in order to fill this loneliness gap, this void that they feel. You said it happens more with women, and probably it's expressed more with women. I'm certain that men feel it as well. And I just think it's important. Like, as you say things, I'm taking notes, and I want to, pause every so often to make sure that those points are really, really highlighted. So that's thanks. Yeah.
Yeah. So next to the values and the needs and the pleasure, in other words, like the engagement in life, being fully engaged. Like, even if you do something that you don't like, try to be fully engaged. Now, there are many kinds of motivations. You can say, okay, this task is not nice, but why do it? It helps me to take care of my family. Something simple as that can give a real boost for engagement, and then you can do it as best as you can. That's the thing. So that's the second part. So first thing is, like, how can you turn stress into a competitive advantage? The second is make pleasure a priority. But then the third thing, I think, and that is the thing that at the end, when people come to me, very often it's for performance enhancement and stress release. But then in the end, I'm actually working a lot as a relationship coach, because that's where very often it lies. And I see it as the fast track for personal growth. Because when you can do it, when you can hold on to yourself under the pressure of your partner that you love deeply to compromise, well, compromise is okay, but when you keep compromising until you're compromising yourself, then we have a problem. So I love the way Dr. David Schnarch, he said, he passed away last year, put it. He says, like, it's like many relationships, we have an idea of intimacy like this. I meet somebody that I like. Okay, I'm wine you beer. I do some beer with my wine. I do some wine with my beer. But in a certain moment, you have done so much that you lost yourself. If you do a bit more, you lost yourself. You're just a tasteless mixture that nobody wants to drink, because you're practically making love to yourself, and who wants to do that? So the key is then how can you learn to stand on your own feet again? Because then, when you're onto your own feet, when there's this distance to bridge, then desire can come when you come to yourself and come together into this pulsation between coming close to yourself and coming closer to each other. So it's
yeah. Well said. It's funny because I use my hands when I talk about relationships as well, and the roots of the word relationship. Is again, lation is the way things come together, and ship is the state of. And so a relationship, a lot of people get in trouble because they think it's static. And, the way you've held your hands this way, I actually hold my hands this way, which is where my fingers will interlace, and each hand represents a strong person. What makes a good relationship is coming together, coming apart, coming together, coming apart, coming together, so that, as you say, you didn't say it this way, but the key is to keep your own identity while supporting the other person in the growth of their identity. So it's one of the reasons you're here on One Sharp Sword with me today, is because we have such similar thoughts about the way the world works, and we come at it just slightly differently. And I love that. I love that that's the blend. It's so good, Nico. So So that's great. Look, what are you working on now? What kind of stuff are you focused on for your future? I mean, you've gotten belt titles. You've given up the martial world because of retinal detachments. You can't take any more literal hits. You are on this amazing trajectory of helping leaders become better leaders and people in the world to relate better together. So what's your next big next?
So there are two things that I'm working on. Well, first of all, of course, I'm trying to find some people that, well, I become a bit more selective with my clients. I want to work with heroes.
Heroes.
People that make the world a better place. And so that's why I'm now, in part, also thinking, actually working on a group program for healthcare workers, but not only like the doctors that can work with me privately, which I have several doctors or surgeons that work with me, but also very important, it's the support staff. Because now, sure, during COVID, it is, well, I have a few clients like that work together, like it's crazy. But of course, they're not in the position to afford me one-to-one. So I'm working now on something that I can help a whole lot of the support people, the people that are real heroes, that are there day in, day out, taking care of all of us, but nobody's taking care of them. And for me, it's so mind-boggling. I work with some specialists, some people that were in the operation chamber every day. And to me, it is absolutely so mind-boggling that one of the most unhealthy work environments that are existing is the clinical world. Is the medical world. Like, to me, it's mind-boggling.
It is mind-boggling, and it seems to be the condition around the world. Right, that here are super stressful conditions. You need to make literally life and death decisions every single moment. So, wow, good for you. When you say you want to work with heroes and you identify physicians and support staff, what kind of work will you be doing with them?
Well, with physicians, it's very, very bespoke. So for some people, it will be around relationships. With other people, with a lot of them, I think the people that come to me very often, they are so sick with just disease management and they want to go more into health promotion. But of course, like the medical board in Australia, for example, they don't like that. They have these very strict ideas about what MDs need to work on. And so like it's a very, ancient and very, it's like a mammoth, it's very sturdy, it's powerful, but, it's also it has difficulties with dynamics, with transitions, like you say. So I help a few of them make that transition. Like, how can you do that without literally getting sued, by the medical board? And then, and then for the nurse, it's three parts. So in the first part, I help them again turn stress into their competitive advantage. But for more very importantly, I will create like a community where they can support each other, where we have group conversations, and where we share our hero stories. Now, people always think that hero stories are the win stories. No, very often to me, like superheroes are nothing when it's compared to people that work in the medical field, because they step into the ring day in, day out, day in and day out, while they are losing people, while they are facing the most painful and destructive thing, when they're facing with the most intense real life situation out there. But very often, because they're so pushed by the management, because they're getting criticized all the time for using medication, because they're actually not getting the respect they want. The problem is they get pushed so much that they don't realize anymore that they are heroes. So that is what I want to do. I want to help them not only to use that stress to outperform themselves and to find the meaning again in their jobs. That's the essential. And then also, of course, relationally, what they learn for their personal relationships with the doctors they work for, or with their or with their nurses, with their support team.
Sure.
Like that relationship, that relating is similar. Both we have to hold on to ourselves. We have to create that internal psychological safety, because then when one person steps on, the other one has two choices: or they go away, or they step up too.
This is great. This is really great. I want to pause just long enough to reflect on some of the things you said. You talked about, and I have notes that I've been writing. I love the idea of disease management versus health promotion. That's a huge mindset shift. It's a big issue in healthcare, and I guess that's a global issue. Very often you see it in various organizations in healthcare, at least in the United States, and to know that is problematic around the world is kind of sad. It's so to really look at how do we promote health in general is a huge mindset shift. I love the idea of turning stress into a competitive advantage. I think that's something that every single one of us could take with us. Like, if I'm feeling stressed, what do I get to not have to? Like, how do I have to manage this stress? What do I get to do with this stress so it levels me up is a very different question. Because we're so used to, well, if I'm feeling stress, it's almost like a fight. I have to fight the stress, which creates more stress, which is pretty bad. So if I'm feeling stressed, how do I leverage that to a competitive advantage? I love that concept. And it's something I will be thinking about. And that one's stuck with me. I love the idea of creating community. This is huge, that anytime, and this goes for any of our audience, that if you're listening to this, if you're watching this, think about who you're connected to, because I believe that every single one of us, so every single one of our audience members, as you listen to this, as you watch this, that you are a hero in your world. And so who in your world might you get to celebrate with? And who in your world might you get to celebrate? Like, what is the other person or the other people? What are they doing in their lives that you can celebrate? And so I think creating a community to share hero stories is a beautiful and brilliant idea. I love it. And it brings you back to, how do I find meaning in my job? And you talked about, well, sometimes the tasks themselves are just horrible. I had a mentor. I have a mentor that I'm working with, and he talked about loving if you're walking your dog, you got to love picking up the dog poop. Like, just love that, because what you're leaving is a beautiful park, right? So it's like, you might hate the task, but look at the outcome. And so I wanted to make sure that didn't get by as a kind of a point that we can give to the audience as well. So good stuff, Nico. What are you hoping that I might have asked you? What did I miss in our conversation?
Well, there is something that a lot of people don't talk about. I think showing the positive psychology thing, and that's intimacy, like physical intimacy. And I believe that's a big fault. Like back in the past, like Freud and all the other old timers, they talked about it, but always in a negative sphere. Sexuality is all about problems. But what is missed very often is that it's a very healing, self-affirming activity when you do a show with a partner that you love deeply, And I truly believe that the intimate sphere is a very underdeveloped sphere. You have it in the East, you have the Tantra, you have the Taoistic techniques, which goes to a much deeper depth of intimacy and of also, well, your the control of your nervous system. Because I make the comparison between a tantric master that can stay into intense pleasure without just, losing himself and just, going to bed, with somebody that's facing a world champion or somebody who's facing the board. So it's similar, and it's a field that is spoken very little over, for sure, in the United States, I believe. And I think there's a big of gold to be found there. There's, for example, there is a professor. She has her own research facility, and she's trying to get orgasm on prescription. She made the comparison between psilocybin, like magic mushrooms, and how much of a spiritual experience you have with all the positive side effects on, well, depression, for example, and anxiety, and, well, self-pleasure in women. And she have found by very, very subtly that the self-pleasure has much more effects. So there is so much to be found in this. Now,
it's an amazing arena. I think it's the first time we've talked about intimacy in that way on this show, and fantastic. All the doors are open. So I love the you use the concept of intimasphere, which is right. We think about a sphere. What do we let into our bubble? And how great is that? And the idea of loving deeply being so healing, and that very interesting concept. I hadn't thought about it, heard about it. The juxtaposition of psilocybin, the mushrooms, against self-pleasure. So that's it's an interesting arena to explore, I suppose. So what are you doing with that? Like, what's your, is this something you're studying, or is this something you're actually going to be?
Well, this is something I studied for a long time, since I was 14. Like I said, like I didn't dare to talk to women, so I started studying all about that intimacy. It was so fascinating. I didn't understand nothing of it, yeah, what I do is, of course, nothing physical, but very often with some of my clients, not all of them, like not everybody's open for this, and that's perfectly fine. When you work with me, it has to be, whatever we do has to be with your full commitment. Otherwise, we'll not do it. Otherwise, that doesn't have the same effect, of course. But what we can do is can learn a different way of making love that is slower, is much more, it's almost like a sensual meditation where you come just very close and very slow, where you really try to feel. And when you start to do that, you become much more sensitive, but in a way that, less is more, where you become much more aware of the present moment, energy and feelings and sensations between the two. But it can, of course, be, many people don't realize how intense this can be, because it will pull up a lot of things. I can promise you that.
Sure.
It's like, again, it's like a fast track for personal growth. So that means it's not so easy very often.
And this is, you can teach this remotely. It's not like someone actually has to be physically in your presence, because it's not like you're doing something physically.
No.
Essentially, right?
I will do this work. If I do it in real life, there has to be somebody with them, because to me, it's very important that people feel safe, and I don't touch it. It's not for me, and when I do that thing, it's just, I help them. You can try this, you can do this, try it out yourself and come back to me. Of course, it's not like I'm this
good deal. I just wanted to, for the sake of the audience, I wanted to take away the creepy factors. So
of course.
it's like, and when you work with me, yeah, no. So
No.
the
No touchy feely.
so it's really, I am appreciative of the idea that it's like sensual meditation, that you know, slow things down. And this, I believe, is true for all areas, whether it's of a sexual nature or whether it's simply sensual. That, you know, it was Fritz Perls who said, "Lose your mind and come to your senses."
Yes.
He's the founder of Gestalt psychology, and you know, that was back in the early 60s when he said that. And I think that struck me as a great quote, that we get locked in our heads so much, thinking, that if we really can slow things down to feel, and this can happen even, you know, on across a parking lot, or you've gone shopping and it's like, slow down. I used to do an exercise with my clients where I would make them, I called it the 10% exercise. And instead of 10% more, it was slow it down 10%. Walk 10% more slowly. Feel the pressure on your feet. Feel the grass or the pavement as you take your step. Smell the air. Feel the air. Is it humid? Is it dry? Is it like, feel the sun or the fog? Feel and smell the flowers or the oil of the car that's burning next to you. Like, becoming so much more aware it lands you so solidly in the now. It is, and that is really the whole point, I believe, of what you teach, which is,
well, to me, it's like I want to help people to get into more, like I say, ecstasy. And what is ecstasy? Ecstasy is a complete absorption in the moment. Some people call it flow, but ecstasy is something else. Like, flow is a peak experience, it's a peak and you have a drop. But the flow experience, the ecstasy experience, what I talk about, is what Abraham Maslow, he wrote about it at the end of his life. So after he had his first heart attack, he entered a much more soothing, much calmer state. But like, instead of a peak experience, it was a plateau experience where he was so appreciative about the fragility and the preciousness of life. Yeah. And so I believe that when you really focus, okay, how can I recreate more peak experience, which can be sensual, which can be in sports, which can be in music, which can be in work, which can be in everything. It's all the same physiology, you know. Your parietal lobes, you know, they deactivate, so you have more the feeling of connection with everything, and your anterior cingulate cortex starts to connect everything more, and all of a sudden you feel connected. And your brain and your emotions, it's all just you. It's interesting. It's as if you feel the connection more with everything.
yes,
You get less separation, but at the same time you get become much more yourself, because you start to understand your place in the whole.
that's an amazing paradox, right? To be so connected and to recognize that one drop in the ocean is still a drop and makes a difference to that ocean. Really amazing. Again, I mean, Nico, when we first had a brief conversation, I was taken by your philosophy and the way you view the world. And it's why I wanted you here. And having spoken with you more, it's so good. I'm looking at my notes. Ecstasy is the absorption into the moment. And what could be better than that, right? What could be better than that? Just being so absorbed in every moment that you live your life in the state of like, it's just that. Right? That's so good. Well, if people want to find more about you or to reach out to you, how do people find you?
Well, of course, at my website, performwithpleasure.com. And there you can find a free masterclass in which, I give already some very good tools to turn stress into your competitive advantage. So that's one thing. It's like an hour long. You also can find a form there where you can get a free assessment call with me, because again, I don't work with everybody. I work with people that I know I can help. You know, I'm a champion, so I want to have the results. So if I don't know that I can give you those results, I will not start with you, and I will try to find another solution together with you. So that is that. Or you can contact me through my socials, which is Nico Veressen on Facebook. You will find me. You see my face. It's open. Or Nico.Veressen at Instagram. That's possible.
Okay.
Or LinkedIn, same thing. Just
Okay.
my.
Good deal. Again, I mean, you said so many things that just make me smile, right? It's I'm a champion. I get results. You know, it's like, what would happen if each of us lived our lives that way? You know, it's like, look, I'm a champion. I get results. If you know, you've put in the miles to make that happen. You've been punched and have done your punches to make that happen. And now you're doing it in a psychological way to lift others, to get those insights. I'm just thinking, you know, what if every day we woke up with that as a personal mantra? I'm a champion. I get results. What a declaration. I just thought.
Okay. But we are all champions. Like, listen, we won against, I don't know, thousands, perhaps millions of other sperms. Like, we won. We won the race.
Yeah. Yeah. And, you know, even in the wake of what's happened in the past couple of years, right? We've come through something pretty unusual, right? And we're all, you know, those of us that are still here are still here. And maybe we've lost somebody along the way. Maybe we know somebody that's been stricken or has been ill, and you know, they still did a good fight, right? And so, you know, it's like, well, right, I'm here, and I have it's almost like a duty, right? I have a duty or responsibility being here to get even greater results. So this is great. Performwithpleasure.com. Nico Veressen. How do you say your last name?
Veressen.
Veressen.
Yes.
I have messed that up twice now.
Always with English speakers. Not a problem at all.
Nico Veressen. Thank you for joining us. This is this is one sharp sword cutting through to what matters most. I have had an amazing guest in Nico today, and I am your host, Dr. P, Dr. Wayne Purnell, the Breakthrough Success Coach. We'll see you here next time.